Okay, so the inspiration for today's video came from a metal detecting trip that I took quite some months ago now. In fact, it's probably nearer a year ago. And I came across these, quite a few of these. I don't know if that'll focus. You can see what that is. It's a little bell, not a sleigh bell as some might think. These were put onto harness, either harness or onto carts many years ago, so that people could hear the carts coming, basically like a bell on a bike. So I did a bit of research on them because I found quite a few, not all in that good a condition, and some in steel. This one's a brass one. And they all have different makers' names on them, or a lot of them do. You can find a little mark on the bottom, and most of them are cast. Anyway, by the by, I found out about them. Really, rather like them. They're a couple of 100 years old. And then purely by chance, I don't know what I was on. I was on something on the internet, and I found the patterns to make steel ones. So I downloaded the pattern and I thought, why not give it a go? So today's little effort, as you'll see, wasn't 100% successful, and I learned quite a lot, being my first one. So anyway, that's what it's all about today. So hopefully you enjoy it, and we'll catch you on the next one. Right, we have two templates. We've got a large one and a slightly smaller one. Small one's supposed to be out of 8 and the larger one out of 3/16. I'm going to do the larger one, but I don't have any 3/16, so the closest I've got is 4mm, which is just slightly under. So I've already drawn round the template twice, so I thought I'd cut 2 out in case I balls one up. So let's set the plasma cutter up and see if we can cut them out. Alright, I've got everything connected. Just got to get myself comfortable, get my goggles on, because I need to get down quite low to see the plasma stream. Oh, helps if you turn the damn thing on. Duh. Now I've got two settings on this, high and low. The high I think is up to 12mm, and the low is from really sort of very thin sheet up to, I presume, about 6mm. And this is being only 4. The low setting will be ample. Now I'm eyeballing this and doing it freehand. If I decide to do loads of these, if this turns out very successful, I'll probably make myself some sort of a little jig with high sides that I can just clamp onto the steel and run the plasma cutter around, so we're getting a much neater job and a much more accurate job each time, and it'll be obviously quicker. But for now, we're just going to eyeball it and see how we get on. It's a little bit wibbly wobbly, but I think we'll be able to tidy that up with a grinder. I bet my tongue's sticking out. Usually does when I concentrate. Wonderful tools, these plasma cutters. Such a joy to use. Alright, so we're just about there. And that hasn't come out. Find myself a hammer, knock that out because it didn't come out very well. It's a little bit warm. There we go. Let's find a glove because that is a little bit warm. Right, there we go. That's the first one. It's not bad, not brilliant. Got quite a bit of kerf, or whatever you like to call it, on the back. So I'll quickly whip the other one out, and we'll see how we get on. See if this one's any better. Right, there's the second one. It's a little bit better. Still got quite a lot of kerf on the back, so I'm going to knock some of that off and then we'll get the flap disc on it. So I'm just going to knock it off. If you knock it inwards, it tends to come off better than if you try and knock it outwards. It sort of breaks it off, whereas if you try and knock it outwards, it sort of bends it over. You get a lot of it off doing it this way, but not all. See, that bit's stuck. Anyway, that's got the worst of it off. A few little bits and pieces. So we'll get the grinder out. We'll whiz off that. Tidy it up a bit. Got a very old flap disc on here. It's a bit past it, but I think there's just enough left on it to tidy this up. I hardly use a proper grinding disc at all these days. These flap discs are so good. If you get some coarse grit ones for general purpose stock removal, they last really well, and for the price of them you get sort of 10 cheaper than you would grinding discs. Right, that's got that off. I'm just going to take the nasty bits off the side if I can. Smooth it all off a bit. You could probably do this on a belt grinder if you've got a smallish belt grinder that you can get into it with. My big 6-inch one's a little bit too big, I think, for running this across. So I'm just going to persevere with the flap disc for now. Oh, of course you could do it with a file or a die grinder in the vise, whatever you like. There's a guy on YouTube somewhere, I can't think of his name, but he makes fantasy weapons, Michael something or other, and he's got a lovely little die grinder which is it's like a router, upside down router, and he just runs metal across it. I think I might try and make myself one of these days, because it's great for doing just this sort of thing. He's a bit of a character, this guy. I think he's Irish, and I think he's in Martha's Vineyard somewhere. Don't really know much about him. I've caught his channel a couple of times, and it's one of those things you sort of get watching, and he's quite absorbing. He's very thorough with his work, very exacting, quite fun. I don't quite see the point of all the things that he makes, the fantasy weapons, you know, a 5 foot by 1 foot sword. Anyway, there you go. We're just about clean that up. So what I'm going to do now is mark it out. It's a bit warm. So find my chalk. I can't find my chalk or my pencil. That's what I'm looking for, my pencil. I've found both now. Right, so what I'm going to do next, I've got to put some chisel marks to sort of simulate leaf type veins. So I'm going to do that next on this, and I'm also going to cross corner it and find the centre so that we can put a little hole in the middle, because that's what we're going to rivet the stem to, sort of thing, through the hole. So let's mark that out if I can find my tools. Okay, so sharpen my pencil up. It gets quite blunt on this sort of rusty old metal. Right, cross corner it. It's not going to be 100% accurate because I don't think I cut it out 100% accurate. Obviously if you've got a better way of cutting it, it will be more accurate, but this is good enough. Alright, then I'm just going to put across across these fattest bit. That's as far as I want to go with the middle vein up to the fattest bit. I'm just going to punch the centre. And I'm going to drill a hole in here about, well, maybe just under 3/16. And then obviously get my chisel out and vein them. So let's go and drill the hole first. As I say, it's going to be a little bit under 3/16, because by the time you press this, the hole will expand quite considerably. So you don't really want a massive hole to start with. You can always open it up if it doesn't open up big enough. So that's your hole. Let's get it over to the forge and try some veining. I've got this bit of sort of sacrificial plate on the anvil so that I can quite happily chisel away without worrying about damaging the face. This doesn't take long to heat up, being quite thin. So I'm just going to mark it the full width of the cutter, and then just a little bit more, about 1/4 inch more, I think, probably, just so it's about the up to that fattest part, and just put the veiny bits in. You can put as many as you like. I'm just going to put 3 in each side. Just to try and save a bit of time. See how quickly this has gone cold, being quite thin. It's still probably warm enough just to get those marks in. So that's your first one. You see that? Yeah, of course you can. That's it. Now it's focused, you can anyway. So I'm just going to do the rest of them. Get this hot again. Doesn't take long. One of these days I'll put some bits down the side of that so it stays in the middle of the anvil, or make one that's the full width of the anvil. That actually just sits over it. Make life easier. Just quickly do the same again. Doesn't have to be 100% accurate, but obviously the nearer you can get it, the nicer it's going to look. That's that one. Number 2. Halfway there. I'm doing this today because A, I suddenly thought of it, and B, it's a little bit easier on my hand, which is still playing up. I've been offered another appointment with the surgeon, but I've asked for a referral to a different surgeon because I really don't trust this guy anymore. He's had 2 shots at it. I don't really want him mucking about again. So I've spoken to the hospital today, and I should be getting a letter of referral this week, hopefully. Alright, that's the 3rd one. One more, and then we can start getting some shape into it. last time. I'm just eyeballing the centre line. That one didn't really go down the centre, but you could somehow mark it with a few dots if you were really fussy about getting it down the middle. But to me this is good enough. I don't have great tolerances in my workshop. Makes it look more handmade if it's slightly off. I'm just going to do that one again because it's not quite as deep as the others. I think that was the first one I did that went a bit cold, a bit quick because I didn't really know what I was up to. So have another go. Doesn't need to be quite as hot because I'm just going over it again a little bit. There you go. Sorted. Right, now then, what you've got to do next? We've got to dish these on this back side. Just slightly, so it starts putting a bit of shape into it. I'm just going to use a ball peen hammer, and I wish I'd got a depression. That's a bit warm, that. I'm just going to pick that up with something else. Yeah, I wish I'd got a depression in my swage block, which I haven't. So I'm going to use this wood. Bit of an old railway sleeper and my ball peen hammer. Because I'm guessing that a lot of you won't have a swage block either, or a depression, so I'm just going to gently bash around in this block, try and put a bit of shape in it. I must try and look for another swage block that's got some depressions in. Mine's got lots of holes through but no actual sort of depressions. I'm just smelling that wood because it stinks. It's sort of like creosote. Must be what they soak it in. I guess someone will comment that it's carcinogenic, you shouldn't be smelling it. Never mind, eh? Let's see, I'm just putting not hitting it very hard because it's quite soft, being quite thin. You can see already it's just getting a little bit of shape. And that's all we want to start with. Just give it a little bit of shape. Start it off. That's smoky, and not a nice smoky. Stinks. There you go, you can see already it's getting some shape into it. So we've just got to do the others. Alright. Next one. Probably don't need it as hot as I'm getting it actually to start the shape into it. It's doesn't need a lot. I dare say if I hit it hard enough I could probably do it cold, but it's just that much easier doing it hot. Right, I didn't bother showing you the other two because all you've seen is smoke. So now we've got them all bent, but major or minor problem. I cut through, so I've had to weld the back up. It only showed up when I dished it. It split open, so there's your first mistake. Don't cut it too far through. Right, I'm going to use this bit of tube and a ball just welded onto a little bit of bar. I use this for all sorts of dishing projects in the fly press, and it looks as if it's going to be about right for this. Just going to stick it in the centre there, push it in the fly press, try and put some shape into it. Now I want it to sort of go down in through. I'm not sure how it's going to work So if it's too small or too big, I'm going to use this one, which is slightly smaller. And if that's too small, I've got this sort of half a sphere. You can buy these half spheres, which is sort of in between the two. So we'll get over to the fly press, give it a go, see which one's going to work. Now, I apologise for it being a little bit dark over here, but it's right at the back of the shop, and I haven't got much lighting over here, so I hope you'll be able to see alright. I'm just lining this up with the sort of hole in the centre of the bell, and then we're just going to give it a bit of a squish. Now, I'm not sure, as I say, how this is going to work, and I don't really want to push just one little depression out the bottom, so I think I'm going to try moving this around sort of all over, so that not just in the centre. Try and go around the edges a little bit, just to try and sort of encourage the rest of it to fold up. I think in actual fact I probably might have been better off starting with an even bigger bit of pipe, and then get gradually smaller as the shape comes. At the moment I think I'll settle for this, just try and gradually put a bit of shape into it. Just keep it moving so I'm not getting just one hole or one depression. You can see there what's happening. It's coming quite nicely at the bottom, but it's leaving this sort of lip where the leaf bits are. Let's see if I can stick it around the corner, show you a bit better. If it'll focus. It's not focusing very well, but you can see that there's a bit of a ridge, so I think I ought to get it in something a bit bigger. That's certainly a thought for next time, but this is for now, because I don't think I've got any bigger bits of pipe kicking about. I'm just going to put it in at an angle and see if I can sort of encourage them. Yeah, you can see there it's quite easily encouraging that around. So I'm just going to fiddle it about in here for a little bit longer. It's great trying out all these new projects when you haven't got a clue what you're up to. Learn on the move. So that's a bit better. It's starting to come around a bit better. Still got a bit of a ridge in there, but I should be able to hammer those out, I think, or perhaps encourage them out with this tool. So I'm going to carry on, give it a bit more. I might even try getting this hot, see if that sort of encourages it through more, or to follow through more. The trouble is you've got to be careful that you don't get it stuck on this tool, because once the leaf ends close over, it's stuck on there and you have to prise it off. I'm just trying to get as much shape into it as I can mechanically, so that this bit still fits up between the leaves before I have to do it sort of from the outside with a hammer. I think that's almost going to be as far as I can go with this tool before it gets stuck. So that's about as far as I've got. You can see in the daylight now we've got a few little bulges to deal with around here, but we're generally getting there. But something I almost forgot was that we're going to have to, before folding it right in, is make the stem for the bottom that it's going to actually fit onto. I'm going to, just before I do that, I'm just going to try it once hot, just to see if it really makes much of a difference. Let's see what happens. I'm slightly concerned that it's gonna. Yeah, it's going. Yeah, that's not bad. But you see now we're stuck. It's on. It would have pushed down quite nicely, I think, but we just get it off. Yep, there we go. So anyway, it's put a bit more shape into it. So I think that was quite a good idea. So I don't know if you can see if it'll focus. Focus, you blaming thing. There you go. Right, so I've left this one on the right here up a bit because we're going to get the ball in and we need to get inside to rivet the thing and then also try and tidy up those holes. So first of all I'm going to make this stem, which I almost forgot. Just going to use a bit of quarter round and a 5/16 nut. I'm just going to weld the 5/16 nut about ½ an inch down, not far. Focus. Anyway, I think you get the idea. Just going to go and weld that on. Okay, so I've welded that on. Doesn't look pretty. Focus. There you go. You can see it doesn't look pretty, but I've welded around top and bottom. Just going to stick it in the forge and tidy it up. Make some sort of a boss that the bell will sit up against. So I'm just going to round it off, very much like I've done in one of my other videos where I use a nut as a decoration or an end piece or a finial or whatever you like to call it. I really need a sharp bit of anvil to get a nice sharp edge. I wonder if I can do it in here. No, not really. It's sort of sharpening it up, but not brilliantly. Again, I ought to have had another tool ready to hand. Of course, I've forgotten about this bit, so I hadn't even considered what tools I might need to make it. So this is hastily bodged, just a big bit of bar with it's actually a 5/16 hole, I think. It should have been a quarter hole, but the hole's already in it, and I'm just going to stick the bar through there and give it a bit of a bash. So it's gone all over the place, and then put it in the other way and give it a bash the other way, and just to square the shoulders of that boss off so it's a bit tidier. I don't know if you can't really see that, but it's not focusing, but trust me, that's much sharper in there than it was. I'll probably leave it at that for now. Again, if I'd thought about it beforehand, I could have got my guillotine tool out and probably put a nice sharp shoulder on that. But I guess a lot of you guys haven't got the tools, so I'm trying to do it so you don't need many tools. You can see there, that's going to go in there, and then we'll rivet it on the inside. So I need to stick it up in the anvil. No, stick it up in the vise, cut it off and draw it out first. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm coming or going. Draw it out first. Alright, found some tongs that fit it. That was the next problem. So they fit nice and tight. So we'll warm her up and cut her off. Doesn't take long, this quarter, to heat up. Find me hammer. I'm just guessing how much I need. I think I've probably got, I don't know, 4.5 inches, something like that. And I'm going to draw it out into a taper and then round it back up again. Get it warm again. Doesn't stay hot for very long, but it doesn't take long to get hot again. So again, it doesn't really matter how much you taper it. Don't want to go too thin, but that's probably about it. Maybe another heat, or maybe two, I don't know. See how quickly I can round it off. Just going down all the corners now, rounding it back up again. Just keep it moving. Run it down every new flat that you come across, or every new corner that you make. Eventually it ends up round. If you don't do that, I don't know how many of you have watched previous videos, but you must always draw round down into square before rounding it back up again. Right, we can get that hot, stick it in the thing and rivet it on. Yeah, so draw it to square and then back to round. If you try and draw round out round, it'll just split and you'll end up in a hell of a mess. Right, so we've got that hot, stuck it on there. Now I've got a punch. I'm just going to quickly burr that over. I'll put it back in that bit of tool again so it's held all the way around. Otherwise, if I just held it in a vise, I'd get sort of some steps in it. I'm just riveting that over. Sorry about the darkness over this side of the shop. I ought to invest in some more lights over here. Right, so that's on. Now what I'm going to try and do is sort these bulges out and where the holes are bulging. So I'm going to go and get it warm and give it a go over this bit of pipe. I really wish I'd got a depression somewhere, or even just make one out of a bit of solid square or big bit of flat, beat something big and round into it to cause a depression. What do they call them? Cupping swages or something or other. Now I'm going to leave that one open so I can get the ball in before I close it up completely. But I've still got to get some of these little bulges out. So I'm going to go in from underneath. I think I've got or I can find a tool that can do that for me. Now what I found is this little ball. It's about an inch. It already had a hole in it, so I've just forced it onto a bit of bar, stuck it in the vise. I'm just going to try and use that as a bit of a dolly to bang this. You can see them working quite well actually. That's quite a good shot. You can see the bits that are sticking out going back in quite nicely. Then move it round onto the next one. Just bang them back in. I'm trying to keep it sort of spherical. You don't really want to try and get flats on it. Let's warm it up again. Give it another go. Yeah, it's really difficult to try and keep it spherical, but that's what you've got to aim for. So again, you want to try and sort of either keep the bell moving or keep your hammer moving. It's probably in this case keep your hammer moving because the bell can't go very far. It's sort of restricted as to how much you can move it because of the stalk that the ball's sitting on. See there, you can move it around a bit, but that's actually, I'm quite pleased with that. That's worked quite well. I dare say you bright people out there can cobble something similar together. So we're getting there. It's pushing those nasty bulges back in. Right, I've got this ball bearing. It's a bit of stainless steel actually, stainless steel ball bearing, but it's a bit big. But it's the only one I've got. No, it's not the only one I've got. The next one down is quite a bit smaller, and I'm a bit worried about it coming out of the holes in the side of the bell. So I'm going to put a big one in. Bit of overkill, but there you go. Can't be too fussy with what you've got. I'm just going to gently try and fold all these in. Now, eventually you don't want them touching, you want a gap between all of them, but at the moment I'm going to sort of try and push them all in together, get them touching so that they're all almost like bracing each other, so that I can try and make it a bit more spherical. I don't know if you can see, that one's sort of gone under, so I'm going to have to try and prise that one out. But I want them to try and all touch so that I can use, as I say, use them against themselves really, to try and round it up a bit. Right, I'm going to try again with the wood, because that bit of pipe wasn't really doing the trick. It was putting a lot of marks in it. Trying to knock it back into itself, but it's real tricky, this. I dare say there's blokes out there that have made dozens and dozens and dozens of these. He's laughing at me, thinking, you silly bugger, you should be doing it like this and you should be doing it like that. But I say this is my very, very first one, so I'm learning every second. Alright, well it is ringing, sort of. Let's try and get rid of these nasty bulges around the holes. It would be so much easier if I'd got a depression. I think that's going to be top of my list to either acquire or make, if I'm going to make any more of these, is a depression of some sort, because when you're hitting the top you'd actually also be smoothing off the bottom. As long as you keep it moving, you won't get any, or shouldn't get any flats. But I don't know, we'll have a bit more of a go, try and round the bottom off. Now what I'm going to do this time is stick it in the Pritchell hole, and sort of hold it from underneath and try and work on it that way. I'm sort of lost for ideas as to, it's gone in too far, let's get my screwdriver in there. I'm lost for ideas as to how to encourage it back into a round. It's turning more into a sort of a cone shape really, which I don't really want, but I'm not quite sure how to get it back out again. Anyway, we'll fiddle about for a bit longer. I'm worried that if I go too far I won't get it back out, so I'm going a bit gingerly, as you might say, trying not to put any horrendous marks in it from the anvil or any of these holes that I'm using. That's the one big lesson I think I've learnt so far, is you need ideally a proper depression to work these on. You can see it's coming, and you can do it if you're doing a one-off or whatever. But if you want to do quite a few, then I really recommend a depression of some sort, because this is like not too bad so far, but this is like taking an awful long time, this video. I'm going to tidy these holes up and turn the hook on the top. Alright, so I've buggered about with it for ages. I've given up now. I've called it out because it's getting dark here now. Time's getting on. I've been at it for ages. So I'm going to almost call it a day at that, which is okay, I suppose, for a first attempt. It rings. So let's go and bend this up and see if we can put a hook on it of some description. Right, I'm going to use the gas axe for this because, as I say, time is getting on. I'm tired. The dog's desperate to go out. She's been sitting in the truck all day. It's now starting to get dark. So I'm just going to quickly try and finish this off. I bought myself these little pliers that I'm using. They're MIG welding pliers, and they've got all sorts of handy little things on them for getting your tips off and your shrouds off and all the rest of it, and for cleaning out your shroud. They're coming in quite handy for doing this as well. I'm trying to do it without getting my arm in the way because I haven't really set this shot up very well. But never mind, I think you get the idea. Just trying to bend this round. Probably would have been easier to heat it and then bend it round on the anvil, but I'm being a bit lazy now. I just want to get this finished. Alright, bent that bottom bit too much, but I'm going to pull it back a bit and then bend that bottom hook sort of round itself, sort of twist it round. It's not very round, but I might be able to just tweak that up on the anvil when I'm done. That'll do for now. Alright, I'm just going to clean up these holes with the die grinder because they look pretty dire. I think part of it is because of the way I cut them out with the plasma cutter, doing it freehand, and partially the way I folded it up, and with all the hammering, trying to get the dents out of or the bulges out the sides. So it isn't necessary to do this, but I just want to try and get it looking a little bit tidier. You could do it with a file, but as I've got this and I'm in a hurry, I want to get it finished. I want to show you what it looks like, and then once I've done all these, I'm going to give it a clean up with the wire brush. And you could coat it, you could do all sorts of things with this. You could leave it sort of shiny from the wire brush and just lacquer it. I lacquer a lot of my stuff after wire brushing if it's not going on to do anything stressful. Or you could coat it with, or not coat it, go over it with a brass wire brush, which will actually coat it with brass, which will make it look quite nice. But you need to make sure you get a genuine brass wire brush. You can get them that are plated. There you go, that looks much better. Still not brilliant. Anyway, let's get the wire brush on it and see what happens. As I was saying, yeah, you've got to make sure you get a genuine brass wire brush. Otherwise, once the brass is worn off, you'll end up just taking it all back off again because the bristles are actually steel. But that looks quite nice if you get a genuine brass wire brush. It leaves a nice sort of goldy finish. which looks quite pretty, and then again you can lacquer it. Right, so I'm just giving it a quick go. Try and get round all four sides. Get the scale off. These wire brushes, you need to be very careful when you're using these, because this particular one is straight bristles rather than twisted ones, and they fly off all over the place. I end up with them embedded in my sweatshirt, so you've got to be careful because you don't want one embedded in your eyeball. Yeah. I always try and make sure it's pointing away from me, but still end up with them flying into my shirt. One more, is that? One more side. And that's about it. You see how dull it's getting in here, even with the lights on. Right, that's just about it really. I'm going to call it a day at that, because I don't think I can do any better. So there you go. I'm not entirely happy with it. I think I would have been happier doing the smaller one. Although it rings, but the smaller one I think would have been easier to make. But for a first attempt and a proof of concept, you can tell it works. The idea's there, and that was inspired by the bells found on my metal detecting dig, 200 or so years old, for use on carts. Well, there you go. I hope you give it a go and you have learnt from my mistakes. See you on the next one.